Hello there, wonderful people, lovers of the tarot. So the reverse Six of Pentacles comes up, and this is a card which shows the slightly twisted version of its upright meaning, which is that exchange of giving and receiving of materiality in many ways that gets to be expressed and shared and experienced in this world. So here there's the figure with his scales giving to these two people on their knees seeming to be beggars and just measuring out what's being given. So there's a very strong karmic energy to this card, where there is the exact amount of energy exchanged, given and both received in our interactions within this physical world. So the physical world represents the work that we do, the money that we receive, the interactions that we have on a physical level, what we spend our physical energy doing, and also, how that then relates to our giving, receiving on an energetical level, on a physical level, with our own body and our relationship with our body. So the twisted version of this give-take exchange dynamic is going to be seen on one level where the ego becomes involved, and on another level where we might resist, or we might have a certain amount of repressed trauma around giving and receiving. So there's the obvious lack of self-worth that we've already seen in the Five of Pentacles, which comes out, okay, I'm worthy, but only of a small amount. And we could have that program unconsciously strongly buried in the background, because we're not really seeing it. So if this card is upside down and you're not seeing clearly, so take a look and see if there is any program inside of you that asks or tells you, hey, I'm not good enough, I'm only destined to experience a very small amount of receiving, I'm only worthy of receiving just a limited amount, because receiving a lot isn't me, it's not what I'm destined for, and there's an idea that it's not even good. And so there's this poverty mentality that governs the amount of wealth and the amount of richness that we're able to receive from other people. I remember, feeling and encountering this idea in my head that that if I receive from somebody else, I'll have to owe them something. So it's dangerous to be able to receive. So it's good just to receive a little bit, because then I only owe just a little bit. Because there's this exchange has to be even. But this idea really closed me off to being receptive at all, and closed me off to the worth that I truly need to feel inside of myself on a moment-to-moment basis, which stops me from actually attracting into my life, what I am worthy of attracting on the greater scale, on the bigger scheme, on the higher vision of who I actually am. And so this story comes up a lot. There is also a giving and a receiving that is twisted in this dynamic. So we need to ask ourselves, how good are we at giving too? And there may be an over-giving. We may be trying to give too much to that beggar, and it doesn't really matter. If there's somebody who only thinks they're worth so much, you can't really give them more if they're not really willing to receive it. And sometimes we can have a goodwill to want to give. We could have a program that tells us that we need to be of service and we need to give to the world. And we might run around trying to give to the world. But if the world doesn't feel good enough to receive what we want to give, then we're giving in vain. Then we're just wasting our energy and wasting our effort. And this waste of energy and effort usually comes from, hey, I'm not worthy enough either. So you are me, and I'm going to give to you because that's the way I feel my self-worth, and that's the way I feel appreciated in this world, because maybe I don't appreciate who I am without giving enough, right? And so there's some subtle sort of psychological stories here which we can, unwrap and take a look at, and take a look at our beggar mentality. There, in this beggar mentality, with this twisted version of the card, there can also be this entitlement. Like, you've always given to me, so you need to carry on giving to me, and I just need to be open to receive that little amount, that very small amount that I'm worthy, that will keep me trickling on, but I don't need to do anything more than just beg for it. And there's a certain entitlement that comes from that when we create these relationships of receiving, and we're open to receive a little bit, but we expect it and we feel we're entitled to it. And there are certain systems set up in the world and in families that entitle children, entitle certain people to receive a certain amount, and then they feel hard done by if they ever get into other experiences which show them their self-worth, and then they'll blame the person who's trickling money to them or trickling energy to them in some way, that they're not giving them enough. And there is an enabler dynamic in this giving and receiving story of entitlement, and there is the entitlement story. So are we the ones that think we're owed from life, from people, from someone, or are we the ones that think we owe somebody a certain amount? Either way, that exchange is going to be a perfect one, because this is a card of karmic exchange on a material level, and so everything that's exchanged is a perfect balance in many ways, even if we feel like that balance isn't perfect. And that's a lot of what comes up when this card is reversed. The beggar mentality, brings out this tendency that a lot of us have in the world to just believe we can scrape by without owning our right to abundance. And this card asks us to shift that. It asks us to become aware of that poor man mentality and really move through it and really break free from it. Become conscious of it and learn to choose different. Learn to choose our worthiness. Learn to choose our beauty and how great we really are and how fantastic we can imagine ourselves to be, because there's a little bit of heart in this exchange, which, when the heart's open, it's very open to receive an immense amount of gifts of energy. And when the heart's open, it's so open to give. And so the sixes relate to a lot of heart energy. And so when this card speaks about, hey, there's a closed heart, there's a resistance to receive, a resistance to give in a healthy way, in a balanced way, then we need to try and find those programs inside of us and just look at how those ideas might be affecting our lives in general, and how open we are to share in a more beautiful and heart-centered way. And that's key to understanding this card. There could be a lot of fear of the judgment, and I relate to this as well, where there's sometimes a need to get down on our knees and ask, not as a beggar, but recognizing where we are. And sometimes we need to be able to receive, and we need to bring our arms up and say, our hands out and say, hey, I'm ready to receive from you. There's a judgment that comes along behind this, hey, asking for something. Because if we're asked for something, then we must be poor. We must be the beggar, right? Because we wouldn't ask for something unless we were weak, unless we were poor, unless we were vulnerable in some way or another. So I don't want to be judged by other people to be any of those things, because I've told myself that all those things are wrong and bad. And so I'm going to be afraid to be open to receive. And this dynamic is a strong idea which we need to dig out and say, hey, no. Receiving is actually great. It actually gives other people the opportunity to give, which and maybe invoking that in some way. We don't need to expect it, we don't need to fight for it, but we do need to recognize the beauty of that type of exchange and how enriching it is. And if you're asking from your heart, not from a level of poor me, give to me, I'm entitled, but instead a level of, hey, I'm worthy and I'm open for a little bit more greatness and gifts from the world and from the universe, then maybe this, as well as giving of ourselves, if we hold both of these heartfelt qualities inside, and we recognize that we can give abundantly and receive abundantly, then this dynamic is going to get cleared up, and we're going to twist this card around, and we'll see the exchanges taking place with much more awareness. There's an ego that jumps into this card's exchange dynamics, which is where this guy is showing the world, hey, look at all the charitable donations that I'm giving to the world here and here and here and here, and look at this is not real giving. It's giving with one hand but not with two hands. The other hand's behind the back going, yeah, give me appreciation, give me, tell me how great I am. And this is just, again, the ego identity trying to big itself up for an exchange which is taking place naturally all the time. We just need to be aware and ask ourselves, hey, it doesn't necessarily matter how much money I have. It doesn't even necessarily matter how much I'm earning or how healthy I am maybe in my life. Do I have a beggar mentality? Is this an unconscious story? And am I giving with conditions to it, or am I giving really from my heart? Am I open to receive on a deeper level? All these types of questions are super important when this card comes up. It's a little bit of a longer message today, but I hope it's helped you in some way, and I hope you get all of the transformation you need to when reflecting about this Six of Pentacles reversed.